I just want to congratulate you on the fantastic Advent service that the choir did a few weeks ago. You must have just been so proud of them just to hear that.
It was amazing.
Caliber.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I always try to prepare these things thoroughly so that we'll be, I always say, so that we'll be able to still do them even if lots of people are ill. But there was quite an extreme example with only 10 choruses able to sing out of 16, and they still managed to do it, and with our organ scholar conducting instead of me. So yeah, it was a great sort of tribute to the whole team.
Yeah, it must be so fantastic just to be able to hear your students just making that level of music, just flying the nest, and
absolutely. They're incredible. I mean, people say the aim of a teacher is to make the pupils not need the teacher anymore, and all that. But I mean, the truth is that working in a place like St John's, I have such unbelievably talented people as organ scholars and choral scholars, many of whom are far better musicians than I'll ever be. And so I'm in a very privileged position that they can learn from me, but actually I can learn a vast amount from them as well. And that's not true of all people who run choirs around the country. So I'm very lucky to work with such talented people.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the album, The Tree.
Yeah.
I loved listening to it, and I feel it just showcases the choir in the best way with all the different repertoire that you have and the colours that the choir have been able to produce. Tell us a little bit more about it and how it came about.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. I do think that we've done a lot of good things in sort of one-off live occasions that couldn't be recreated in studio conditions. For instance, when we got sort of a couple of hundred alumni of the choir back to sing under Christopher Robinson's direction, or the time when David Hill, my immediate predecessor, his choir from the Yale Schola Cantorum came over, and this is the only time we've ever done a joint service together, and so it was a unique occasion and wonderful to capture that. But there are also sort of different times from the choir's year, and sometimes just the boys, sometimes one or two things showcasing some of our commissioning policy, like the James Long piece, and I'm keen on doing things with not just choir and organ, but also with other instruments. So the piece for choir, organ and trumpet was an example of that, but also showing some of the more traditional repertoire, I suppose, at the heart of the St John's repertoire in my time, and probably in the time of my three predecessors, has been the sort of late 19th century, early 20th century British repertoire, and so there's a fair bit of that, and that kind of repertoire seems to suit the acoustic of the chapel particularly well. So there are lots of things, and I also wanted to use this idea. The disc is called The Tree, and there are sort of three particular ways in which The Tree seemed an apt title. I mean, firstly, it is the title of a piece by Jonathan Harvey, which is on the disc, and that sets a text from the book of Job in the Bible, which is all about hope after and regrowth. So there's hope for a tree that has been cut down, and that new shoots will spring up and new roots will grow, and it'll put forth branches like a new plant. And so I think for all of us, in this, as we try to recover from COVID and the way it's had a terrible effect on all arts organizations, and we're all trying to sort of regrow. So that's a nice analogy for our time. But there's also the sense of perhaps of St John's College Choir itself being a tree. I mean, the choir's been in existence for, I'm not sure how long, at least 350 years, and has been kind of famous around the world for perhaps the last 60 or 70. Initially, thanks to the amazing work of George Guest, who was here for 40 years, but that's been sort of, the new branches are sprouting all the time, and new things happening under my direction, and Christopher Robinson and David Hill. So the tree's getting sort of ever bigger and more varied, and members of the choir leave the choir and then go off and do other things. They join the King's Singers, or they become orchestral conductors, or they become cathedral organists, or whatever. And so there are, it's always developing in different directions. So the choir itself is a tree, and the third thing is that, in a way, the album itself is like a tree growing from just what you might say I'm mixing metaphors rather a lot, starting from the sort of single seed of a monodic bit of chant by Hildegard, so just one line at a time, and then in the next piece it's still just trebles, but you add an organ part, albeit a very high organ part without any pedals, so it's sort of suspended in the air, and then you add some lower voices, and then you add another choir, and then you add 150 other voices, and at one point you have a trumpet as well, and then you end up with 500 voices in the hymn. So it's this sense of growth in lots of ways. And one of the pieces by Stamford is kind of about growth in a different sense. In that case, it's a text about a stream turning into a river, turning in and flowing into the sea itself. So there are lots of reasons for the title and the design of the album.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And how did you go about choosing the different I imagine that you must have had just such a treasure trove of archive recordings that you could have chosen from. So how did you go about choosing which recordings to use?
Yeah, well, I tried to have a few things from particular occasions. Obviously, I mentioned that Yale evensong, and that there has only ever been one such service. So I chose two pieces from that service, and the big sort of choir reunion service that we had in 2019. That was another unique occasion, getting quite so many singers back together. So I chose 3 pieces from then, and then as regards other pieces on the disc that were just sung by our sort of present choir on its own, I just tried to choose various things from the last decade or so that seemed to me to go well together and to make a pleasing sequence, and also to demonstrate some of the variety of the choir. I mean, like it's nice that the first piece is by Hildegard from, I don't know, whatever, 900 years ago or something, 800 or 900, and then that's immediately followed by a sort of near contemporary piece by Jonathan Harvey. But so that seems an odd juxtaposition, but actually it's a lovely one because of the kind of weightlessness of both of the pieces. They both seem to be suspended in the air, and actually Harvey was a great admirer of Hildegard's music and asked for us to sing it at his memorial service in chapel. And I think there's a particularly sort of spiritual element to both of those composers, Hildegard and Harvey. So I enjoy making, I sort of designing an album in a slightly unusual way that sets up some surprising juxtapositions of pieces and makes listeners realize connections between different periods that they might not have thought of otherwise. I think the order of an album is really important, isn't it? How one thing flows from another. And I was reading about Adele on her new album having asked Spotify or somebody to take away the shuffle function, because she's planned very carefully what order she wants her songs to be in, and she doesn't want anybody to mess around with that. And I like that idea of using individual things but creating a whole in a very carefully curated way.